So now we have two speakers. First speaker is Reo Zenger. He is a former sysadmin who was working at an ISP and through that became interested in civil rights and freedom issues online. And our second speaker is Odd van Daalen. He's a former attorney and a researcher at the Institute for Information Law at the University of Amsterdam. And he is now the director of Bits of Freedom, which was relaunched 4 years ago at the last Dutch Hacker Camp. And the two are going to talk about what has happened since then. Please welcome on stage Reo Zenger and Odd van Daalen. Give it up.
So thank you. I remember standing on this platform, or a very similar platform 4 years ago. We were inspired by digital technology and the promise that it brings. The possibility to connect people and to empower people, the possibility for innovation. But we also saw the risks of control, the risks of surveillance, and the risks of censorship. And it was with that promise in mind and with those risks in mind that we relaunched Bits of Freedom 4 years ago, right here, or at this similar platform. Since then, a lot has happened, and we thought that this was a nice moment to go back, what has happened the last 4 years, and look forward, what will happen in the coming 4 years, and what can you do? So let's first start with how it started. In 2009, for me, the sense of urgency was really big. A lot of things were happening at the same time. Data retention law was just being adopted and was to be implemented in the Netherlands, ensuring that every location of every Dutch citizen was stored for a period of 1 year, and that all internet traffic, all internet access and emails was to be stored for half a year, traffic data. The biometric fingerprints in passports were to be introduced, also to be stored in a central database. Disconnection laws were high on the agenda of a lot of countries. It started with Adobe in France, it then branched out to the UK, and it was even being discussed in the Netherlands as well. Website blocking, voluntary website blocking was another issue which was on the agenda. Dutch ISPs wanted to block, or at least were pushed into blocking websites with images of sexual child abuse. The talks around ACTA had just started and were already being discussed here at HAR as well. So there was a sense of urgency. It had to be done now. And we were not the only one who had this sense of urgency. There was like this second wave of digital rights organizations in Europe. First we had one wave in 2001, where Privacy International started, and where Bits of Freedom in its original form also started. But then in 2009, a lot of new national organizations launched. Panopticon in Poland started in 2009. European Digital Rights Initiative had a full-time employee in 2009. La Quadrature started in 2008. Bits of Freedom at that moment started as well. We always thought that it was necessary that we were there, but the extent to which it was necessary really surprised us. The amount of support we gained in a very short time was amazing. And not only that, the media found us very quickly as well. And this was for the simple reason that they didn't have a trusted expert, a source to counter the force of the lobbying forces which were continually pushing for restrictive policies. And not only the media, not only supporters, but also politicians were very much open to our presence. I remember one time emailing Nelly Cruz and for an appointment, and we managed to get an appointment within 1 week. It was really incredible. For the simple reason that we were the only one representing interests of internet users. So It was, and I'm sure that the other organizations have the same experience. So that was the backdrop of 2009. So what happened then?
Yeah, so what happened since 2009 in the last 4 years? We've been struggling hard and we have won a couple of those battles. For example, everybody remembers ACTA, and I remember all the news reports and all the protests of people, thousands of people on the streets, even on cold days. People weren't on the streets because they liked those obscure trade agreements, but they were on the streets because they thought internet freedom is important. Another example is in the Netherlands we have seen quite some proposals for blocking access to websites, but most of those proposals, or all of those proposals, do not solve the underlying problem, they only hide it. And we were able to convince the politicians to not agree with such a proposal, and so we don't have such an internet filter in the Netherlands right now. And one other well-known victory in the Netherlands is of course net neutrality, where KPN, the Dutch telco, was very bragging about using DPI in the network. People stood up and they started to write about it and explaining that they didn't like it. They even went to the police to report this and to get the prosecution after KPN. All of this made a lot of fuss and made a lot of traction for the politicians to come up with a solution and have net neutrality enshrined by law. So these are examples where we have been very successful in the Netherlands, but also in Europe. But on the same hand, on the other hand, we have to say that we also have been struggling on a lot of other issues. Ott already mentioned the data retention. It was there already 4 years ago, and it's still here. And I'm not very optimistic that we have it retracted within the next year or so. And it's weird because 500 million of Europeans, they are being in the crosshairs of the governments while not being suspected from any wrongdoing. Another example is the hack proposal in the Netherlands. Our Minister of Justice has proposed legislation which where the police can hack into your computer and remove data or install spyware. And this legislation has lots of more horrible provisions in it, like in requirements for your password to hand over your password if they have your encrypted hard disk. Internet filters, I already mentioned there were a few proposals in the Netherlands and Europe in the past 4 years, but there's again a new proposal for internet filters in the Netherlands, this time to block access to illegal gambling sites. So there's a lot of issues going on where we still have not been able to make the right change to it. Also, I find it very, very illustrating that if you look at the program of Ohm, Google will know about it because there's some data stored from shown in the page from Google. So it's very hard to find your way on the internet without being tracked. And then there's one more thing, which personally, when I was not yet working at Bits of Freedom, I always had this naive idea of we need to win a couple of battles and then we're done. But we're not. Because if we win the battle and something like net neutrality is enshrined by law, we still need to monitor all the developments around it. And now, for example, in European, a proposal has leaked which would overrule the Dutch net neutrality, and if this proposal will pass, then we will lose net neutrality again in the Netherlands. So, where I thought in the past we need to win some battles and then we're done, that's definitely not true. So it's very interesting to analyze this and to have to see what has changed in those past 4 years. And one thing we notice is that politicians have become aware of the internet. So internet freedom is not only on our agenda, but it's also on theirs. And it's not that they have the same description for the same definition of internet freedom. So their agenda differs from us while they're using the same terms for it. So, and also one other thing which is noticeable is that the government uses it always to their own end. So internet freedom, if talked about by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, he will notice how important he will explain how important internet freedom is, how important internet freedom is for countries with oppressive regimes. But on the other hand, you have Dutch Minister of Justice who on the same day proposes all kinds of legislation which will break our freedoms. Not only governments have become more active on this field, but also some companies, from like in security companies, they have become much more open in the media to talk about it, and this will change our. This will require a change for us how we work. So one thing to notice is that not only politicians have become aware of the internet, but there are more organizations we have to take care about. But not only politicians know now about the internet, but also the general public has become more aware. They have become more aware of all the privacy-related issues because there are many security information breaches every day. There are new revelations from Snowden regularly. So the public is become also more aware of what is going on. And this, in part, is about the public is concerned about what's happening in Egypt or Syria, but sometimes it comes more closer. So if you look at London, where they had these riots, then the UK government was thinking about, okay, if there are riots, then social media are the problem, so we need to shut down the internet or access to the to phones. So then, not only it's far away, but it's coming closer to people as well. Another thing we have noticed is that where in the past you had an internet which was open and where you could easily build alternative to an existing feature, nowadays that is a lot harder. You have lots of companies. Well, not a lot. You have some companies which are extremely big and which have created gigantic platforms, and they have closed it off a lot. So you cannot really build an alternative and start exchanging data with them. And that means that you cannot build an alternative social network, for example, because you will not be able to get the users from the one network to the other. So all those companies which are now kind of monopolies and which have very, very closed systems, they are also influencing the way how we can solve issues by technological means. And one other thing to notice is that the debate has become much more complex. Take for example something we've been working on last year a lot, which is the general data protection in Europe. Maybe in the past you could say sometimes, okay, this is a bad proposal and that's it, and this is a good proposal and that's it, but now you have to weed through thousands of amendments, and you need to examine all of those separately, and you need to take a position on all of those separately. So it has become a lot more complex to fight these issues. Also, the government has become more aware of organizations like Bits of Freedom. So they are really trying to preempt the debate. They are trying to they do their best to have their legislation proposed in a way that people will accept it. They try to. They have become aware that we are a powerful organization, and they're trying to take the power away from us. That's it. And this also changes the way we need to play this game, because it becomes a lot more a tactical game to play. And also, not only the issues itself become more complex, but also the surroundings are more complex. We have a world in which we are digitizing all the time more, and this makes it that if you have a view on cybersecurity, you not only can talk about blocking the internet, if that's okay or not, but you also need to think about all the other implications around it, which makes fighting these issues a lot more difficult as well. And of course, a lot of things is going on, so it's very, very hard to keep up. Now, if you have these in the back of your mind, what can you deduce from it? One thing is that the amount of stakeholders we have to deal with are growing. They are increasing. Also, the amount of awareness, both good and bad, is rising. Then the amount of issues is rising, and with those issues, the amount of complexity is also rising. So this brings us to an important question: what are we heading for now?
Yeah, so if you extrapolate those trends, increasing awareness, increasing complexity, increasing stakeholders, and increasing issues, then this will definitely continue. More companies, more NGOs, more politicians will become involved in this issue. It will not only be a case for the Ministry of Justice, but it will also be a case for the Ministry of Economic Affairs. It will not only be a case for digital rights organizations, but also for Amnesty and for other organizations. And these may not all be aligned with us. Secondly, the awareness, as far as we can see, tends to taper off a bit after sort of the 20th data breach. Then people think like, well, whatever, what can I do about this? And the same goes for the revelations from Snowden. The first time you see this, you're like, this is incredible. And right now, after the 7th or 10th like X-key score was published, and we were also, how does it fit into the greater scheme of things? So people will become a bit tired, we guess, about privacy restrictions. On the other hand, it's not like restrictive policies will not be introduced anymore. We have seen over the past 4 years that restrictive policies are being proposed, and we think that this will just continue to be the case, and maybe at a more rapid pace. And lastly, it's just the case, and this is really important, I think that we conclude that digital rights organizations which are currently in the field cannot do it alone. So let me tell you what we do. We do advocacy work. We do we speak to politicians. We advise them on how policy should be like, what policy should be like. We do campaigning, so we try to mobilize people on our issues. And we do empowerment, so we build websites, tools which give people the power to use the rights they have. But as you can see, we do a lot. We don't do other issues. For example, we don't build real technology. We don't do litigation strategy. We could be much better at awareness, creating awareness. We don't do research. All in all, this paints a picture of there are many, many issues on a geographical level. We only do the Netherlands. Organizations like EDRI, La Quadrature, etc. only do part of Europe. There are many more issues apart from internet-related issues like financial privacy, medical privacy. We don't do those. And apart from that, we don't do all methods. So we don't do litigation. We don't do technology. And so this is where you come in. You often hear at talks like these, you need to support us. We are this organization. We cannot do this alone. You need to support us. I think that at the pace we're going in right now and the direction we're going in right now, that's not a winning strategy. We need to change the strategy from you supporting organizations like Bits of Freedom to you starting organizations like Bits of Freedom or starting your own one-man army. And this is where we want to This is what we want to discuss in the second half of this talk. What can you do after you walk out of this room to defend digital rights and start your own army, be it a one-man army or a multiple-man army?
So there are many things you can do, and we will mention a couple of them, but it's definitely not an exhaustive list. One thing which we find very, very important all the time, which we notice that is very useful, is fact-finding. So a lot of research needs to be done to make our cases very clear to journalists, to politicians, and a lot of research is not done yet. And I'm pretty sure all of you are very much in the position to do this research because you have a lot of knowledge on how technology works. For me, for example, I was before I started working at Freedom already, I was doing a lot of FOIA requests. A FOIA request, which means that you can ask the government to open up documents on a specific policy. This is very helpful because you can uncover all kinds of policies which are not clear to the public, but by having those documents in your hands, you can show, okay, this is really going on. For example, I did before with Freedom already, I was doing FOIA requests on data retention implementation in the Netherlands. I get a lot of documents, and those documents were actually on data retention as it was meant by the European Commission, so data retention of telephone data and internet data. But we also noticed that in these documents there were references to storing bank account details. This was completely new. But then we could go to journalists and explain to them what was happening. It was a scoop, became big in the media, and that's when the government, within a few days, had to say, okay, sorry, we're not going to do this. So doing a FOIA request is it doesn't really take a lot of time to do, but it will provide you with lots of information on what the government is actually doing. And this will help presenting our cases a lot better. And one other example, I just mentioned a FOIA request where you could find really a scoop from inside those documents, but it doesn't have to be that way all the time. Last week it became well known in the Netherlands that the tax office was looking into the data of parked cars. So you have those, if you park your car, you have to enter the license plate number into the meter, and this will be stored in a national database. And they also have cars driving around the road with ANPR cameras on both sides, so these will store this data as well. And although the company who is storing this national database said, okay, we keep those records only for 8 weeks, it turned out they were kept for much longer, for years. When I did this research, I only was looking just a little bit into this national database, and I was mainly focusing on this car that was driving around recording all those license plates. But I handed over to a journalist, and a journalist did some additional research, and then he found that the tax office was getting the data of 2012 for all parked cars. So if you do some FOIA requests and you do not find any scoop in it, it is not really a problem. Sometimes it's enough to get the ball rolling, to get something on. So again, it doesn't have to be a lot of work, and it's fun because I like it a lot to do some work on it and see other people picking it up and making a change from it. So these FOIA requests, this will also help you to make yourself a trusted expert to the media, to journalists. Because of doing a lot of FOIA requests, I know that some journalists they know they can find me. They know where I am. They know what I'm doing. They know they can trust me. So if they have a problem with in the digital area, they come to me and ask me on help on covering a story. Journalists need help anyway, because they have they're on tight schedules, they have deadlines, and it's for them very, very difficult to grasp a difficult technological problem and to describe this to people who don't have any idea what they're talking about. So they need help in explaining the technical, the underlying technologies. And this is where you can help as well, because you all of you know how technology works, and you know how to explain this. So if you can help a journalist in doing so, it will really help. But also, you can do, maybe you are interested in tracking on the internet using cookies or whatever. If you can do some research and you can prove there's a problem, for example, 2 years ago or something, it was shown that if the user deletes the cookie, they were replaced by the flash cookie, so ignoring the user's wish. These types of research will also explain the problems very well. And then there's one other thing which I want to mention. If you talk to journalists, you will notice that the journalist always needs to have comprehensible examples. At Bits of Freedom, we are struggling with this from time to time. We have, very often we have what they call a smoking gun, but we're lacking the dead bodies. So we can show there's a problem with some technology or with some law, but it's very hard to find the examples which are showing this, what the problem actually is for regular people like my parents or anyone else. So that's where you can help as well. And there's one more thing I want to mention on the FOIA. It doesn't really take a lot of time, but it takes, you need to, it's a long procedure, so maybe it takes 1 or 2 hours a week, but you will have to be working on it for like 2 months or 3 months. And because of this, journalists don't like to do FOIA requests, and if you do so, you can help them a lot. One other thing is raising awareness. I already mentioned the example of that people don't know what actually is going on, and if you like the cookies, doing such research and handing it over to a journalist will help the understanding of regular people for what the problems actually are. And becoming this expert to a trusted expert to a journalist is not very difficult. It can start out with just emailing them or twittering an explanation for an issue that is at hand. If you notice something is coming up on medical dossiers, there's a new proposal made, you're the ones who can explain what the impact of such a proposal is, or the hacking proposal, because we understand technology. We can explain to a journalist what is the problem with the police hacking into your computer and possibly deleting your data. And so it's very easy, I think, to get in touch with a journalist and to explain what is going on, to bring them, to help them with the explanation, but also help them with finding the right angle to attack the story. And I can tell you, if you start doing so with small steps, in the end they will find you and they will come to you a lot more often. And also there is a lot of campaigning to be done. There are a lot of issues going on that could help that people go on the streets and start protesting. And that doesn't take a lot of effort, I think. You need to create a website, you need to make people enthusiastic about it, you need to mobilize people. And this can be done with fairly limited resources as well, and can have a huge effect. Take, for example, ACTA. Without those thousands of people on the streets in Europe, I'm pretty sure the outcome would have been different. These are just a few examples of things you can do, but there's a lot more you can do.
Yeah, so basically fact-finding and awareness are very easy, low-key things which you can do. Another thing where there's a huge gap is litigation, or basically enforcing rights. So what we notice is that we have these rights, but companies can easily ignore them or infringe them because they basically will not be punished for this. So we also need activity on that front, and there are two ways you can do that. The first one is go to supervisory authority. The government, for example, in the privacy sphere, has a data protection authority which keeps track of whether companies comply with privacy laws. Now, say you are to find a breach in whatever, a Facebook app or whatever. And it turns out that they're leaking information and they are misrepresenting what they're collecting or whatever. You can be the one who starts proceedings against this by writing up a detailed report, technical report, and sending a submission of that report to the Data Protection Authority, asking them to pick up the case. And if it's sufficiently informative, it's sufficiently convincing, if it has a high priority on their list, and if you are sufficiently vocal about it, chances are they might even pick it up. For example, and even if they don't, then the media pressure is already great. For example, you all probably know Europe versus Facebook, which was started basically by one student, a law student, who who submitted a right to access request on his information to Facebook. He received thousands of pages on paper with all his information. It turned out that Facebook didn't delete all the information they said they deleted. So this was a huge media opportunity, and it made people aware of what Facebook was doing actually in Europe. You need lawyers for this, but don't overestimate this. Maybe you need, maybe you can team up with a friendly law student who wants to help you with writing the submission to the Data Protection Authority. But most of it is our technical fact-finding issues, and this is stuff which you can do as a geek as well. Another thing is litigation. This is something where you obviously need lawyers for, but let's forget about the lawyers. A big part of this, again, is fact-finding and making sure that you have the technical expertise right. And this is where you can make a lot of a difference. Also, organizing litigation, organizing proceedings is a way to make a difference. We see in Austria, in Germany, there were cases, court cases against data retention organized by thousands of people, and this had an impact, although it wasn't killed yet. So that's one, litigation. Another is building tools. We have gone through this already. You know more about this than we do. Tor is doing this already, but there's a lot to be done there still, user interface, etc. And if you work at a company, you can help others by sharing information. For example, currently there's a huge debate about wiretapping in the Netherlands. We just don't know what is going on. It would help immensely if people from a company which, for example, supplies services to wiretappers, or which works at these networks, actually comes to us and tells us how the things work. So, in short, fact-finding, awareness, enforce rights, build tools, and share information. If you really care about this world and want to improve it, then there's not really a good excuse to not do it. Let's think of some of the reasons why you wouldn't start an army yourself. So the first one is it takes too much time. That's not true. There's a lot of things you can do which do not take time. For example, FOIA requests take maybe 2 to 4 hours a week for a period of 2 months. Doable, it can be done in your spare time, it doesn't cost any money. Going to a demonstration doesn't take a lot of time either. It doesn't help. That's not true either. We have seen that very small actions like publishing research on flash cookies or whatever can already have a huge impact on making people aware on developments. It's too late. It's never too late. For example, if we are under siege, then the reasons for becoming active are even stronger than before. It will not affect me. Well, maybe it will not affect you right now, but it will affect you in the long run. Possibly you'll be able to distance yourself and isolate yourself from monitoring tools and will be able to circumvent censorship. But in the long run, you will just be outlawed and your technologies will be outlawed. And if it is not you, then at least your family and friends who are not as technically aware as you are. So don't do it only for yourself, but also for the circle of friends you live in. And lastly, it cannot be done. So 4 years ago at this stage, we had a plan basically. We didn't have anything. We wanted to build an organization of say 6 people which could introduce net neutrality, stop web blocking, stop surveillance. And right now, we're here. We built this organization. We can do it, and we hope that you will pick up the torch and start building your own army after this talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have some time for quick Q&A. Please keep your questions short. If you'd like to talk to the speakers for longer, you can always talk to them afterwards at the media cafe. Please.
I have a suggestion for an army of very simple activities. My experience is that if you want to explain internet to somebody who has no clue but has a lot of power and influence, then you have to talk to him or her person to person. So I propose a project which is called Adopt a Politician, and that they get buddies which explain to them what's going on, what's behind this basic knowledge. Axel has already started that. They don't want to show in public that they have no clue. So you have to do it behind the curtains, okay? Adopt a politician.
Yeah,
That's
great
a very
advice.
good suggestion. Yeah. And this is already it is already done. For example, in Germany, Digitale Gesellschaft, I think, already has this working. We don't have this in the Netherlands, or I don't think in any of the other countries in Europe. So yeah, that's a very good suggestion.
So guys, thank you very much for your talk. I was wondering, there are a lot of technologists here. You are also subject matter experts in some directions. How do I get my friends involved who are neither, so who know very little about these subjects, but who do find them important?
So, well, if they find it important, then already you're halfway there. First, we had to struggle with the, I don't have anything to hide argument. But if they're already past that, then I think you're halfway there. Then just doing things together with them is a great way to get them involved in these activities. I mean, doing stuff together is even more fun than doing it alone. So I think that would be the best way to start.
And to make it even easier, I think just talking about it already helps. So it makes people aware, it makes people understand what the problem is. So just start talking is already one step, I think.
So sitting here in the stand, the past days, listening to the lectures, I'm not too optimistic about our freedom. But do you think there will be a time that you can change your name to Bytes of Freedom?
Yeah. So I'm afraid that at this stage, I don't think it's really relevant to think about what lies ahead, but more think about what we are currently in. And I share your pessimism about the current state of affairs, especially after these revelations of Snowden. I think that there's even more reason to work very hard and ensure that we are going to be called megabytes of freedom.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Okay.
Okay.
Think
well,
we can wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
And again, the speakers will be available at the Media Cafe right after this talk. Thank you.